Welcome everyone to today's webinar, AI Attention and Acquisition, Trends Shaping Healthcare Marketing Success. We are so pleased you could join us today, and we're excited to spend the next hour sharing 6 trends shaping healthcare marketing success. So some quick introductions for those of you that don't know me. I feel like a lot of you have heard me speak a lot lately. I am Stacey Comte. I'm the Client Success Leader for IQVIA Health System Solutions, and my role is exactly what it states. I am responsible for our client success with our solutions. I am joined today by 2 of my fantastic colleagues from our Fathom arm, Elise Horst and Jeremy Mathis. Elise is our Associate Director of AI Solutions, bringing over a decade of experience in strategic marketing and communications to her work. And Jeremy oversees our account management, project management, and strategy functions within our agency business. Before I turn it over to them, I want to mention a couple housekeeping items. So the first thing is that today will be recorded, and we will be sharing that recording out to everyone, as well as the presentation. And we also will leave time at the end to answer any questions you may have. You might see a Q&A box to the right of your screen. Feel free to drop any of your questions in that box throughout the presentation, and then we will moderate those at the end. So I'm going to keep moving along here, always trying to find things on my screen. So as we all know, there's been a shift in healthcare marketing dynamics over the past couple of years. And one of the things that we've heard most from our clients is they are looking to consolidate partnerships. So as we evaluated our business at IQVIA for how we can fill gaps and ensure that we can meet our clients where they need to be, we identified Fathom as a great partner for moving forward. So this has been a great partnership for us. Through this partnership, we're looking to empower more intelligent engagements with hyper-targeted audiences to ensure that we get those audiences in your hand to be able to effectively communicate with patients, providers, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeremy to run through the first of our 6 trends and those trends that we're going through. So he's going to go ahead and start with investment.
Great. Thanks, Stacey. Appreciate it. Thank you all for joining today. As Stacey mentioned, I want to talk a little bit about media dollars and the allocation that we are seeing and our recommendation and some thoughts for consideration as you're looking at media mix and you're looking at allocating your media dollars. But before I get there, I want to start off with some trends that we're seeing in the space. And the first one is you can see here on the screen, we continue to see healthcare overdriving with their traditional ad spend over other agencies. And as we drill down a little deeper here, you can see it's about a 60-40 split where healthcare advertisers are placing about 60% of their dollars into traditional media outlets. These are things like out-of-home billboards, terrestrial radio, broadcast TV, print, versus digital. We see about 40% of that going into things like paid search, paid social, display, video, advertising, streaming radio, those sorts of things. Now, when we zoom out a little bit and we look at all advertising spend across all industries, you can see those numbers shift quite a bit, where traditional spend is about 35%, and digital actually makes up the bulk of the spend that we're seeing outside of the healthcare space, with about 65% of that going to digital platforms. So I want to drill down here with a few more slides to quantify this a bit more for you all. When we look at healthcare specifically, we are seeing that TV and outdoor advertising makes up about 45% of the total dollars in market. Now, if we take a look at that from a wider lens, we see that that's about 25% when we include all other industries, right? So the difference there is pretty stark. And when we drill down even one layer deeper and we look at digital advertising spend, this is where we're seeing the breakout there. And again, this is across all industries. But as you can see, that navy blue bucket on the right side of the pie chart there, that's 37% of spend going into paid search. Down at the bottom in green, we see about 22% going to mobile display, and that royal blue color, about 15% into paid social. This aligns very much with how we typically like to allocate digital dollars. And I want to talk a little bit more as to why we take that approach. As we get into that, it's important to understand why, right? Why are we so focused on digital? Why is that more important? And really, it comes down to that's where people are engaging content. right? We know that about 64% of consumers most often engage with digital media over traditional, right? And we only expect that number to continue to grow as we move forward. We also know that 3 in 4 Americans are going to start off their healthcare journey with an internet search. And so, because that's where people are consuming content naturally, that's where we want to be as marketers. That's where we want our messaging to be for our healthcare organizations. And so we really like to take an inside out approach to media planning and media allocation. And so would strongly encourage you to consider taking a similar approach with your own media allocations. First and foremost, we like to start off at the center of the circle with search. We want to maximize our investment here. These are individuals who are actively searching for physicians, locations, treatment options, and we know they're the most conversion ready, right? This is the bottom part of the funnel where we will see the most bang for our buck. So always recommend maximizing the spend that we can get in search first before widening out a little bit to that next level. At the next bar, we like to open it up a little bit more to programmatic, display advertising, and social media. This allows us still to be very targeted with the audiences that we are going after, allows us to open up a little bit more to some of the brand awareness and the overall preference that we're looking to drive. And it also allows us to educate a little bit more and connect with a wider audience beyond those who might be actively searching for a solution. From there, the last bucket that we want to dive into is traditional media. We recognize that traditional media does play a key role in marketing, especially for healthcare and especially for those of us in a competitive market, right? It can be important to leverage sponsorships that you may have, to look at radio or TV or out of home to help bolster your marketing mix. But we want to make sure that we're doing it strategically, right? We want to find the right place for it. And we want to make sure that it is aligned with our overall brand awareness and brand preference needs. So with that, I do want to turn it over to Elise and have Elise talk a little bit more about AI. Just to wrap this up quickly here, again, we know that traditional channels play an important role, as I mentioned, but the reason that we really focus in on digital is because it offers greater precision, right? And we really believe, especially as budgets are continuing to get tightened, we need to be more efficient, more effective with our marketing. We want to make sure that we are targeting the right people at the right time. Digital allows greater clarity and greater precision there than more of a rider approach with traditional. And that's really why we leverage digital primarily for our healthcare media allocation. Now I will turn it over to Elise to talk a little bit more about AI and how it's affecting search.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. So definitely wanted to spend some time digging into search, knowing that of the digital dollars that health systems are spending, search makes up a large portion of those budgets. And it's one of the areas that have been maybe most disrupted by what AI is doing to the marketing space. So the biggest thing that we've seen change in the search space as it relates to AI's impact has been the introduction of AIOs or AI overviews, which are that little summary that you're probably seeing at the top of a search results page when you do conduct a search in Google or even a Microsoft tool, and you see that nice summary that's aggregating all of this helpful information and displaying it back to you in a way that's really consumable and honestly is helping you to kind of bypass clicking around in a bunch of different websites and getting you that answer more immediately. And what we're seeing is that those AIOs are actually most prevalent in the healthcare space. So we as an industry have been most disrupted and impacted by the presence of AI overviews. And you can see that that was true at the start when they first rolled out in May, and that has continued to be the case as we've continued to track and measure their prevalence in the industry. Part of the reason for this is that the healthcare industry just has a wealth of really reputable and factual information that is beneficial from an SEO lens across the board, but is particularly helpful as we look at AI overviews and having AI do some of the work of actually pulling from and vetting content before displaying it to people. So just that wealth of content has made the healthcare industry really prime for AI overviews. And to get a little bit further into the content that AI overviews are favoring as it relates to the healthcare industry, you can see that there has been growth in the content that AI overviews are sourcing from major clinic sites, from AMCs, from international health services, and specifically as it relates to clinical content and then content geared towards patient education, which makes sense if you think of the scale of searches that are likely happening in the realm of patient education versus something like research content. There's likely just more search volume in that area, so it makes sense that those are the sources that AIOs are pulling from most often. This also gives you some direction as you're thinking about how to prioritize content that you might create for your health system. You might look at prioritizing some of these areas where we know AI overviews have interest and are actively pulling content from. And then in addition to changing sort of the experience that someone has once they complete a search in something like Google, AI is also really shifting the way people search and the way that people find care. Like Jeremy mentioned, so many patient journeys start out with a search and trying to understand your symptoms or figure out what the best next step is. And AI is really shifting the way that we go about that. The whole sort of idea of AI prompting has kind of stumped a lot of people. And the reason is because we're sort of having to untrain ourselves from the weird way that Google has trained us to search for things by just one or two words. And we've gotten accustomed to the fact that we can speak to AI in natural language and we can give it longer tail search queries, if you will. We can ask it questions. We can give it a lot more personalized information and get much more personal answers back. And so we're seeing a resurgence of what we've called long tail queries in paid search specifically. And so we're accommodating that with a broader match type strategy than we were in the past, knowing that it's becoming harder and harder to account for all of the various ways that someone might look for something like, these are my symptoms, what should I do next? And so we're seeing a bit of a change in the way that people are thinking about or interacting with search, in addition to just the results that they're seeing once they complete that action. And in younger generations, where people are searching is changing even more exponentially. So we're seeing that Gen Z and millennials, they are more trusting than older generations of the content that AI is producing. And as a result, they're actually turning to things like ChatGPT just before they even go to Google for search. So a lot of the younger generations are sort of bypassing the traditional search experience altogether and relying more heavily on things like ChatGPT to get their answers for them. And so all of this kind of begs a question of, as advertisers, how do we account for this, knowing that, especially in the healthcare space, a big chunk of our digital budgets are going to paid search? Should we think about that differently? And the answer is likely yes, at some point. I will say that in the immediate, at least, Google has rolled out some advertising capabilities within AI overviews. And so their stance right now is that if you are not in a sensitive industry, of course, healthcare falls into the sensitive industry bucket, so we're not eligible for this right now. But for other industries, they are eligible to display ads within an AI overview if the content of the overview is relevant to the query and you're bidding on a related search term, you are eligible to show up in AI overview. So this just gives us a sense that Google is, of course, looking to monetize this space, and it kind of remains to be seen as to if they roll this out to healthcare or not. And then as you think about measuring the impact of AI overviews, that's a question that we get a lot from the health systems that we work with, just trying to understand if the prevalence of AI overviews in the healthcare space is having a negative impact on their advertising performance. And it's sort of interesting to me that a lot of experts in the space right now are pointing to click-through rates as a way to measure the impact of AI overviews, assuming that with AI overviews in place, people might be seeing your ads but not clicking through because they're sort of getting the information that they need from the AIO and they're not having to go elsewhere. And I would say just keep focused on the metrics that have been most important to you, right? Click-through rate has not been a metric that we've really hung our hats on in paid search in the healthcare space in a long time. And so kind of why would we look at it now and prioritize it now? Stay focused on the things that matter to you. If that's traffic to your website, if that's leads, if that's appointment volumes, those are the things that you should really continue to monitor. And then we can look at other metrics to help us understand if people are consuming content differently or finding us in different ways. But I wouldn't be too alarmed by sort of upper funnel metrics that haven't been integrally important to our strategy up until this point. And so just a couple key takeaways. Again, continuing to lean on SEO best practices. That has been sort of our recommendation to our clients is the SEO best practices that you've been using as it relates to building out content are what are going to continue to set you up for success in the future. Really be mindful about the type of content that you're investing in and making sure that that aligns with what AI overviews are looking for and pulling from so that you can have a presence in the SERP, even if it's not someone going directly to your website. And then make sure that you're just staying true to what performance means for you and what results are most important to you. And be wary of getting a little too distracted by what AI overviews might be doing as it relates to more upper funnel metrics. And so we talked a little bit about younger generations and them sort of bypassing the traditional search experience altogether. One of the places where they're going for information is TikTok. So we wanted to talk a little bit about this channel. I know it's been in the news a lot lately as it relates to the TikTok ban that keeps getting extended. So it's here to stay, at least for the short term. And you can see here that it actually has a pretty large footprint. So not surprisingly, Instagram and Facebook are probably always going to lead the way in terms of number of social media users just because of the longevity of those platforms compared to others. But TikTok is really getting a foothold, especially among younger generations. You can see there in the Gen Z audience, almost as many people have TikTok as they do Instagram, and Facebook is on the low end of the spectrum. So we really see an influx of people going to TikTok, and that's important for health systems as we think about sort of the next generation of who will be serving from a patient population standpoint. And it might be surprising or maybe even a little bit scary to think of the fact that people are going to TikTok to look for health information. But we do see that about 22% of people have searched for health tips on TikTok. So people are going to TikTok to learn about things like their sleep health and healthy eating and things associated with health and wellness. And about 41% of users are using TikTok as their search engine. And you can see that that number is even larger if we look at the Gen Z population specifically. Almost 65% of Gen Zers are using TikTok as their search engine of choice. And Google actually, or TikTok rather, just released a search ads campaign functionality at the end of last year. So this has been something that's been really interesting to us, knowing how important search is to our patient acquisition strategies for a lot of our health systems, and also thinking about the fact that search means something different for every generation. And so if we're running a campaign where we're looking at reaching a Gen Z audience for one of our health systems, we can use this search ad campaign type. You can actually target people based on the keywords that they're searching for within TikTok. So it operates similar to search in that regard. And then you can serve them up with video content. So a great opportunity for us to take advantage of as healthcare advertisers, knowing that TikTok is a place where at least younger generations are looking for health information and spending more and more of their time. So some key takeaways on this front, again, just thinking more broadly about what the search landscape includes, especially if you're looking at reaching a younger generation. We've seen TikTok engage really nicely in things like sports medicine campaigns and with obstetrics, gynecology, women's health, primary care, things of that nature. TikTok could be a great opportunity for you. And don't think of it as purely an entertainment platform, although that is, by and large what people are familiar with it as, but people are using it to find information. And so you could think of it as a way for people to find your health system as well. The next thing that we wanted to talk through, sort of similar to the transition that we're seeing in search, is a shift away from traditional TV and into digital video. And this is happening both from an advertiser standpoint in terms of where advertisers are putting their dollars, as well as from the perspective of just where people are going to consume video content. Like Jeremy mentioned at the beginning, TV makes up a large portion of healthcare's advertising budget, and we've seen that start to shift a little bit, at least as it relates to consumer media consumption, into the digital space. And so there's a bit of a disparity right now in the healthcare space between the amount of dollars going to TV advertising and the people who are actually relying on things like linear cable TV in their day-to-day lives. And so you can see that here, just sort of the stark decline year over year, starting back in 2022, of people who are paying for cable TV in their US households. You can see that number has been on the decline, changing at a pretty rapid rate of upwards of 40% down year over year in terms of the number of people who are actively paying for cable. And so with that, of course, we've seen some viewership declines. That's been happening across broadcast TV and radio as well. So both sort of traditional channels that do play a role in a lot of our health systems' traditional media budgets. And then we see people not just moving away from those channels and adopting digital, but actually replacing a lot of their linear TV capabilities with connected TV systems and moving away from cable entirely or becoming cord cutters. And some of the platforms that we're advertising on and that we're seeing people turn to are some ad-supported connected TV platforms like Hulu and Disney Plus, Peacock, Prime Video. All of these things actually allow for us to employ a wealth of audience targeting capabilities. So with linear TV, one of the biggest drawbacks outside of cost is that you can't be highly targeted. But if you're running programmatic connected TV through a DSP, as we often do in healthcare, we're able to target people in the same way we might target them with a display ad or a native ad with connected TV. So we can be really mindful about where those dollars are going, and that allows us to be a lot more efficient. The cost is a lot lower, and we know that those dollars are going to the audiences that we want to see our content. And we often keep sort of the placements that we're running on a bit broader so that we can pull from Hulu to Disney Plus to Peacock, Netflix, YouTube TV, what have you, based on where we're seeing the biggest efficiencies and the best engagement. So a lot allows for a lot more flexibility and also precision than we're able to achieve with traditional TV. And sort of in contrast to that trend that you saw earlier around the number of US households who are declining in terms of them paying for cable, you can see that investment in online video advertising is going the opposite direction. So this has been increasing year over year over year and is expected to increase even more in 2025. We're seeing about $110 billion being spent in programmatic video in 2025. And programmatic video can include anything from online video to social video, connected TV. And we're seeing that actually about 3/4 of all new programmatic ad dollars, so any ad dollars going to a programmatic channel, are coming from video for these next couple of years. So definitely seeing a surge to video in the online space. And AI has really accelerated this. As I'm sure you're aware, video can be really costly to produce, and it can be really hard for health systems to keep up with having enough creative variations to employ all of these tactics. And so having AI in the mix and the ability to use AI to edit or produce video content has really opened the door for a lot of advertisers to take advantage of video in a way that they maybe weren't able to before, just based on assets available. And when it comes to connected TV, unsurprisingly, we're seeing that most often Gen Z and millennials are turning to connected TV, but really all generations are adopting connected TV in some capacity, even baby boomer generation. So we're seeing about $40 billion in US ad spend projected to be spent in connected TV by 2027. And again, that's a space where we can really reach people of all ages and in a really targeted way. And so, in terms of sort of what this means for you or how we'd recommend thinking about this, TV makes up a large portion of health systems media investments, as we know. And those dollars are important. Like Jeremy mentioned, we know that traditional media is really important for health systems, but we can gain a lot of efficiencies and scale by moving some of those dollars to programmatic channels where it makes sense. So, if you have a need to reach a really niche audience, but you want to educate them and have sort of the benefit of a longer form video, we can do that through digital video and online video, and know that consumers use a multitude of streaming services. And so the way that we approach that can be quite broad, and we can really tap into a lot of different platforms to help us reach people in a multitude of ways versus sort of just pigeonholing all of our video investment into one network or one platform or one medium. So, sort of related to that, we talked a lot already about sort of precision audience targeting. So, we wanted to get into this in a little bit more depth. There are a couple of ways that we target audiences in the healthcare space that we rely upon most often outside of just sort of basic demographics. So, giving you a little bit of a sense of contextual and behavioral targeting. So, contextual targeting is where you are reaching audiences based more so on the content that they're consuming. So, you're actually targeting the content of a page versus an individual themselves. And this has been talked about a lot recently because it doesn't rely on third party cookies. And I'm sure you've heard over the past several years all of the chaos that has ensued around third party cookies being deprecated. So people were really flocking to contextual advertising in preparation for that, knowing that it was something that they would be able to rely on in the future. Providers like Peer 39 and ComScore have a wealth of audience segments in the contextual space that we can tap into as advertisers. And then mid last year, Google said, actually, we're not going to deprecate all third party cookies. We're going to put a different solution in place. So I feel like contextual advertising has maybe gone a little bit backwards in terms of popularity since then. But it's still really important and effective. And so we don't recommend writing it off by any means. There's a lot of great value in contextual advertising. Just the demand for it maybe has gone down a bit in recent months. And then on sort of the flip side of that, behavioral targeting. So this is really a lot of advertisers' bread and butter. It's really helpful in the healthcare space, and it can sort of be hard to come by. But this is where we are reaching specific audiences or individuals based on their web behaviors or their interests. It does rely on third-party cookies. That's what allows us to sort of follow people around the internet, and offered through data providers like Metadata, Axiom, IQVIA, who we're here with today, and more. So we'll talk a little bit more about behavioral targeting, but just know that these two really work hand in hand, and we often employ both of them when we're running a campaign for a health system because they both provide value. So when we talk about contextual targeting, again, we're talking about targeting related to the content, less so the individual. And there's immense benefit to this. If you think about the fact that it's great that we can target people who are likely to have been diagnosed with breast cancer, for example, because then we know that our dollars are getting in front of people who we can help with breast cancer treatment, but they may not be in a state of mind where that message is really going to resonate with them everywhere that they are online. And so having contextual targeting in the mix is really helpful. So making sure that we're targeting people, for example, maybe with a sports medicine message on content related to sports, or we're targeting people with a spine message in content that's maybe related to back pain, so that we know that the individual is sort of already in that frame of mind and maybe ready to take action and look for a solution. And there's some stats here on this slide that just speak to sort of the effectiveness of contextual targeting. So 60% of consumers say that they are likely to remember a contextually relevant ad, again, because it's sort of already topically top of mind for them. About 3/4 of consumers say that they like to see ads when they match the content they're viewing. So they seem sort of less intrusive and more organic to the content, and there's benefit to that as well. And then on the behavioral side of things, so if we want to look at people truly based on sort of who they are and less so where they are online, we might employ behavioral targeting. And this is something where tapping into a resource like IQVIA is immensely beneficial. So they offer really privacy safe ways to reach specific healthcare audiences, everything ranging from a full slew of off the shelf solutions to things that can be more customized. And they're all de-identified, modeled, everything that ensures patient anonymity is in place, but allows us to reach people likely to have a particular diagnosis or likely to be taking a certain prescription or have tried other pain management options or treatment options in the past. And so it's really unlocked a lot of doors for us to be able to reach our health systems audiences in a super targeted way that of course then drives better engagement, better results, better patient acquisition results down the line. So behavioral targeting has been really important to us and has been more readily available in the programmatic space. In the social space, it has not been as readily available. So if you've been keeping tabs on all of the changes that Meta has gone through over recent years, they have removed a lot of their health-related targeting capabilities. So you really can't target people on social based on anything related to value their health or wellness. And so the ability to use these customized audiences that are rooted in health related things and deploy those both programmatically and on social has sort of unlocked a whole channel to us all over again. We're able to engage people in a targeted way on social as well. And to give you a sense of what this looks like, so say we're running a campaign for cardiac surgery, the target audience is men and women of a certain age who've been diagnosed with heart or vascular disease. And the way that you might approach targeting that group out of the box on Meta today would really be just reliant on gender and age. But with something like an IQVIA audience segment, we are actually able to look at individuals who are likely to have had some of the comorbidities associated with these diseases, or some things that may indicate that they could be a candidate for cardiac surgery at some point down the line. And then we can layer some of those readily available targeting segments on top of them so that we can really hone in on things like age, gender, geography for additional granularity. But this is what we mean when we say behavioral targeting, is really getting specific about the prospective patient that we want to see our ad and the action that we want them to take. Then in terms of what this means for you, obviously privacy is a fluid issue. It's something that's constantly changing. And so kind of being at the ready for whatever is next to come is really important. So I wouldn't put all of your eggs in one basket as it relates to targeting capabilities. And I wouldn't rely solely on out-of-the-box targeting either, because there's a ton of custom options out there for us as healthcare marketers that can just improve the results and overall impact of our campaigns. And then just being prepared as a health system to share more detail about your target audience with your agency that you're working with or with your internal team. That's something that we've been doing a lot as Fathom, is going back to our health systems and saying, okay, let's better understand this audience. Tell us a little bit more about the procedures that they might be undergoing or the comorbidities associated with them. What symptoms might they have? Because we can use all of those things to inform our targeting strategy and to achieve really granular targeting segments. So it might take a little bit more upfront education that will ultimately pay off in our ability to target people in a much more robust way.
So in terms of key takeaways from what Elise and Jeremy shared today, the first is the prioritization of digital investments. So we want to make sure that we're focusing spend on high-performing digital channels, layering in those traditional media channels to amplify our brand awareness. We want to strengthen SEO and our content foundations. We want to adopt any SEO best practices, invest in educational content, and carefully assess the impact of AIOs. Expand beyond traditional search, so including those additional platforms like TikTok. That was definitely a big aha for me as we went through this presentation, especially looking at those meeting younger audiences where they're searching. But I'm sure that with many of you, just the demographics associated with the utilization of those platforms was a big eye-opener for me. Aligning video spend with media consumption, so shifting video spend to programmatic, moving away in some of those situations towards traditional where we don't have targeting capabilities and limited tracking capabilities as well. With all things with health systems today, we're concerned about security and safety, so we want to make sure that we're targeting with safety and precision in mind, being able to be as targeted as possible without concern for the legality or any implications that would have for your health system. And then in addition to all these things, one thing that we know and we talk a lot with our clients every day, focused more in the provider space, is that we need to ensure that we have ways to engage physicians. And ultimately, physicians are nothing else if not digital consumers like the rest of us. They all put their pants on one leg at a time, and they all use the internet the same way that all of us do. So, being able to use hyper-targeted ways to address physicians online the same way that we do with consumers is extremely important. And understanding their media habits will also boost patient acquisition, because what is provider marketing if not a patient acquisition strategy? Okay, so that wraps us up. We ended up really early, so we definitely have time to take any questions. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat right now. While I wait for potentially some of those to come in, I'll remind everybody that we will be sending the presentation after our engagement today. I think that'll probably go out tomorrow, the presentation and also the recording, for you to share with anybody else in your organization that you think would be valuable. And please feel free to connect with Elise, Jeremy, myself, all on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to us directly. Our contact information will be there as well. For those of you that are already partners with us, feel free to reach out to any member of your IQVIA or Fathom team with any questions you may have about how this might apply to your health system. Okay, well, thank you all for your time today. We very much appreciate it. Again, feel free to reach out with any questions you have, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.